Hi guys, it is another hot, sticky, miserable day here in the end times in paradise, in the former paradise of East Bumblefuck, New Mexico, here in the end times on Friday, June 16th, 2017. But we're gonna, well, I was thinking of saying we're gonna forget about the end times for a few minutes, but I don't think we are gonna forget about the end times for the next few minutes, because it is my major pleasure to introduce one of our own tribes members, and that is none other than Mr. Kevin Hester, coming to us from New Zealand here today. And we're going to talk to Kevin about, with his Unfuck the World t-shirt, we're going to talk about how fucked the world is and exactly what we can do to unfuck it. And I'm probably going to lose his screenshot here in a minute. On a comment yesterday, Kevin said, I chronicle the convergence of the rise of fascism and the unraveling of the biosphere leading to near-term human extinction. So we're going to use that as our diving board, and we're going to get Kevin back. There he is. Okay, Kevin, take it away. Say hi to the tribe and tell us what all that means.
Greetings, tribe. Welcome to the perfect storm. What we have at the present is we have an unraveling biosphere, and we have a bunch of psychopathic and sociopathic lunatics who are occupying the White House that slaves built. Those people are completely and utterly out of control at the very moment in time where we wanted to have the most amount of control over the dominant culture as possible. We couldn't be in any worse situation than we're in my eyes.
Okay, well that's a pretty good summation. So far so good. Before we get deeper into the state that we're in, just tell us a little bit about how long have you been down this rabbit hole? How did it arrive in your own life, and to get to that conclusion you just stated?
I was 19 years old when I first got involved, and you can see that that's an eternity ago.
So you're 50, so you and I are the same age. You and I and Guy McPherson, all three are, I think, 57, is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I got involved in the anti-nuclear protests in New Zealand, and we had a unique victory that very few people had around the planet. New Zealand was made a nuclear-free zone, and that was a huge victory, and it inspired a lot of people. And I got involved in anti-imperialism as well as environmentalism. So my activism career has been mixed between environmentalism and anti-imperialism. And then as a young boy, I fell in love with sailing. And because I live on an island, you know, I've been immersed with activities in the ocean all my life. And I got into a career of a yacht delivery skipper, where people were paying me to sail around the planet on their beautiful yachts. I couldn't keep a straight face. It was hilarious.
Now tell the folks where you just came from, as a matter of fact.
In what respect?
In 15 minutes ago, what were you doing?
Oh, okay. You want me to fess up? You want me to fess up about why the interview started a few minutes late? Okay. Well, we had a small provisioning emergency on the island where I could see the last few bottles of beer that I had. And, you know, anyone with any sense of priorities on the planet will understand on an isolated island, that's a major emergency. So I was able to get beer delivered down to the wharf by a friend who happened to be going by in a yacht. You know, I didn't get a special trip done for me. The beer turned up. So we have a very big football game on in New Zealand. By football in New Zealand, the religion of New Zealand, the primary religion, is rugby. And there's a big game on tonight. So I had to have beer for this interview. Cheers, by the way.
Well, I'm drinking iced tea myself, brother. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just digress. I just wanted to give people a little slice of life of what you're you're keeping on the pulse of the collapse and keeping the island flowing with beer, and I'm sure the island appreciates that. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So you've been down this rabbit hole for well, hell, that's 38 years. So good for you, brother, and you've kept the passion. How have you managed to do that?
Perhaps it was because we had a victory like no other. You know, a lot of people who have been involved in environmentalism have won a few small battles, but we've always been on the back foot. And getting the anti-nuclear status in New Zealand was extraordinary. But then I just fell madly in love with the oceans that that we all came from and that I grew up around. And I started doing this sailing around the planet for a job. And what happened, what was the first thing that really told me we were in trouble is I saw fundamental changes taking place on the ocean. First of all, I watched the albatross disappear. I've done 16 ocean passages, pretty much all in the Pacific, all on small yachts, under 60 feet. And I noticed first that the albatross, on my first trips, I saw lots of albatross, and then they disappeared. And then I saw lots of flying fish, and they disappeared. And that brought up a red flag for me. And my immediate analysis was that, it's bound to be overfishing because the longliners take out a lot of the albatross. And with all the modern technology we have now, we have the ability to vacuum the oceans of everything in them, which we're doing at the best of the corporation's ability. They're vacuuming every single living organism out of the oceans. So I saw those changes tangibly in front of me. And then I started investigating more into it. And then, with the advent of the internet and the ability to go and search and look for all these things, that's how I came upon Michael C. Rupert and Guy McPherson. And one thing led to another.
So, what is define in your view, what is the state of the planet's oceans here on going into summer of 2017?
They are turning into a acidic, plasticized, ionizing radiation is another big thing that's taking place in the oceans that no one talks about. We had Fukushima Daiichi meltdown with three meltdowns and almost certainly melt-throughs, primary and secondary containment. And that those coriums, the cores become coriums when they're melted, they're somewhere below those plants. For the last 6 years, water has been running over whatever's left of those fuel cells and going out into the Pacific. And no one talks about it. Not even the big NGOs. The big NGOs don't even talk about it. When was the last time anyone saw Greenpeace talk about Fukushima Daiichi?
It's getting pretty much off the radar, but it'll be back. It'll be back on the radar. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Where do you see the oceans then? Well, we'll get to where you see humans coming up. But, I hear all this talk, the oceans will be dead by 2050. What do you have to say about that statement? The oceans will be dead by 2050.
The dominant culture is controlling the narrative around when the shit is going to hit the fan. Whereas the reality is the shit has already hit the fan and it's flying back at us at the moment. You'll always hear people referring to the situation will be like in 2100 and what the situation will be like in 2050. It's all fucking bullshit. The reality is the shit has hit the fan and it is unraveling really, really quickly. And the whole control of the narrative around these dates is really important. I got a post on my website on kevinhester.live about the lies about the baseline temperature dishonesty at the edge of extinction. We always hear these things where people in different articles, they're talking about how far above baseline we are now, but none of them are going back to the true beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. They go back, what, 110 years or something?
Well, some of them are even going back less, going back 30 and 40 and 50. The reality is in 1698, Thomas Savery, who was an engineer and an inventor, he patented a machine that was able to draw water out of flooded mines using steam pressure. He was burning coal in 1698. Why isn't 1698 our baseline? If it was, we would be 2 degrees, or no, if not 2, we would be something like 1.8 degrees C above baseline now. Way past the aspirational target in the IPCC and knocking on the door of the 2C limit that they're trying to tell us now is safe, and it was never safe. 2C ain't fucking safe. Have a look around you at the chaos that is unfolding. The real safe boundary was probably somewhere like 0.75 or less, definitely less than 1C. Yeah. And we are steamrolling past those numbers and into who knows where we will get to before we collapse the atmosphere of the planet.
I don't know. Do you have a glass window behind you or something that's reflecting the sun?
Yes. Can I change that a little bit?
Yeah, let's get you out of the. I don't know. You're getting rather. I kind of like it. There you go. I thought I kind of like the halo effect. There you go. Okay, that's a lot better.
Yeah, that's just Hollywood getting involved.
Yeah, we have the golden rays of the sun coming down, lighting up your "Unfuck the World" shirt. You know, you can't script stuff like this. Only on low tech. Well, since we're brushing up against all of this 2 degree stuff, what is your opinion? I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I'm asking you. Sum up your opinion of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is getting a new round of cheerleading from all ends of the spectrum in the past couple of weeks. Is the Paris Climate Accord going to save planet Earth from climate catastrophe?
It is a complete and utter charade. First and foremost, the restrictions and emissions that they agreed to voluntarily, remember there was nothing compulsory about the agreement, the emissions targets that they set were never going to have any noticeable effect in slowing down the runaway freight train that we're all on, because it completely ignores the issue of tipping points. Years ago, we were all talking about the danger of us crossing tipping points, because once you do, you have the domino effect and it just spirals out of control. In Guy McPherson's Monster Climate Change essay, he has, I think, 6 dozen tipping points that we have crossed that are self-perpetuating and mean that we will have more warming from each one. There's the cumulative effect of all of those. One of the problems, or one of the multitude of problems with the Paris Accord, is that they're only talking about emissions relative to humans, not considering the feedback loops that are all unfolding now. So that agreement, as far as I'm concerned, isn't worth the toilet paper that it was written on. But they want us all to concentrate on it. They want us to all be talking about, oh, Donald Trump, you know, when all the shit hits the fan, when all the shit hits the fan, Donald Trump will be blamed for the fact that the climate is unraveling. But the reality is, it's been unraveling since 1698. We just didn't get to see it until recent times where it gains momentum.
I'm just floored. Just the absolute Not just the dumping on Trump, you're probably well aware. I think Donald Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement is the least damaging thing he's done to this planet since the day he was born, much less elected. But just all of the cheerleading out there that has just infused this whole. This making this damn Paris Climate Agreement. I mean, this sound like the Bible of how to save the planet, and everybody is hopping on. No one is saying the emperor has no clothes here, but I guess you're saying it.
Absolutely, it's all a diversion now. So much of all of this is a diversion, so we don't concentrate on the real elephant in the room.
Which is?
One of the biggest elephants in the room is imperialism. If you're an environmentalist and you're not an anti-imperialist, you've missed one of the biggest aspects of the unraveling. The Pentagon is the largest single user of fossil fuels on the planet. And they are just going around bombing the bejesus out of people of color all around the planet. And when do you hear the environmentalists like Naomi Klein talk about imperialism? Oh, yeah, she can flick shit at capitalism, but unless you're attacking imperialism at the same time, you're missing a vital ingredient in the jigsaw puzzle.
And what is your view on the age of imperialism for the U.S. empire from your New Zealand perspective? How is the rest of the planet watching this whole thing tank up here in the U.S.? What's your reading on it?
We're in late stage everything. There's been a paradigm shift on this planet that very few people are able to grok. We're in runaway. All the old rules are off. It's all well and good to try and cut your carbon footprint. I live in a house that has a solar powered. Get my rainwater off the roof, so my water, my electricity is all generated on site. But it's not going to make a dog shit of difference as long as these lunatics are rampaging around the world. I've got a post on my website about the inevitability of nuclear war. We have these psychopathic evangelical Christians in the White House. They're intrinsically linked to the military-industrial complex. That complex has built thousands and thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons. They have always wanted to use them. The only thing that I can conceive of that would slow down the runaway stage of this catastrophe that I believe we're already in is a nuclear winter. If you throw enough particulate and dust up into the sky, people like Carl Sagan hypothesize that it will cool the planet. When we get into the real blatant, obvious runaway stage, they'll start firing those nuclear weapons at each other or at their perceived enemy. I fear for Iran because they've been building Iran up, and now just recently they've been building North Korea up as a nuclear threat to the world. For pity's fucking sake, the major nuclear threat to the world is the United States of America, terrorist nation #1 on the planet.
Now, I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but I know Paul Beckwith and I and other people are kind of looking at India and Pakistan. I think Paul, when I first discovered Paul, how I did was that video he did, just throwing out the point that if India and Pakistan do get in a nuclear war, that might bias of, you know what I'm saying. So where do you weigh in on India and Pakistan?
Well, it's always someone else, isn't it? The United States is spectacularly good at pointing the finger at other people and accusing them of exactly what the United States is doing. Everything that they say about Pakistan, India, North Korea, Iran, they accuse those people of doing exactly what they're doing. They're rampaging around the world, threatening everybody with all of their high-tech weapons. And the only one that they haven't used lately, but you've got to remember there's only one nation on the world who have used nuclear weapons in anger, and it's the United States. So I think it's all a diversion. They're going to build Korea and Iran up as some kind of threat, and that will be their justification for taking them out.
And do you see that happening?
I can't see them not going for that option.
Yeah.
These people have been begging for it. One thing I'd like to qualify about the Paul Beckwith presentation about the nuclear winter that he did, Paul wasn't advocating for it. He was saying it would work. I don't for a second believe that Paul thought that they should do it.
No, I made a joke video, one of my usual satirical videos that he was advocating, thinking that surely no one is going to take me seriously. But I do think he might be talking about throwing out there about maybe the Sahara Desert, blowing off a few. Let's just talk not. Well, you can talk about Paul personally, but just the bigger. All this talk about geoengineering in general. Let's get your take on geoengineering saving the planet at this point.
The planet will be here forever, or as long as our universe is in one piece. It's what is at stake is complex life and habitat. And I think that people don't, there's a lot of criticism about Guy McPherson about his timelines. And I think that people don't understand how quickly habitat can collapse when you've been attacking it for so long. So it's all well and good for people to say, oh yeah, we could throw a nuke into a volcano or into a desert and throw it all up. But we have to remember that there's an ecosystem happening in that volcano. There is an ecosystem happening in the desert. All of those ecosystems have strategic roles to play in our biosphere. None of them are of less value than another.
And on a larger scale, just how do you see the technology out there able to do this and the timeline? I mean, is there? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes people surprise me who endorse geoengineering. Do you see on any level there being, at this point, from where we're looking right now, that we're going to pull this together in time to make a damn bit of difference?
No, I don't see any way, shape, or form. That's when I go back to my comment about a paradigm shift. We are so far over the cliff. We have run our ship over the cliff, and we're in the free fall stage of the unraveling of the biosphere. And people are still talking about potential ways to resolve the problem that could only be done when we were back on terra firma. We're not on terra firma. We're in free fall.
And so when do you think the bottom of the free fall? When is terra firma at the bottom of the cliff going to meet our free fall?
It's this is the $64,000 question that none of us know the answer to. But as part of my sailing experience of traveling around the world and managing risk, I've always followed the precautionary principle. So when I assess a storm coming, I have to make a judgment based on what I think is the worst possible storm that I could be confronted with, and then I need a margin of error. So I look at, I think the thing that most of us who are deeply involved in this at the moment are following is the loss of the sea ice in the Arctic. And when that sea ice goes, we have a multitude of reinforcing feedback loops. We lose the albedo effect, so that means that more warming will be absorbed into the ocean waters in the Arctic. the East Siberian Shelf, which is very, very shallow, and where Natalia Shakova and Igor Semiletov have hypothesized we could have a 50 gigaton burst of methane from. That is a possibility this September. It probably won't be this year. It might be next year or the year after, but it's very soon going to happen. And if that hypothesis comes true, that will be game over for industrial civilization. We will have a major spike in temperatures immediately, because the trouble with methane is that the warming from methane is almost immediate. Yeah. Whereas with carbon, there's the 10 to 30 year lag period between. So now that I brought that up, I think I should mention the fact that the chaos that we're seeing unfolding now is from emissions from last century.
Yep.
There's still another 17 or 20 years of warming in the pipeline that is coming at us at a rate of knots. And I think that people just don't get it, that the context of where we're at now is really as a result of where we were a couple of decades ago.
Okay, well, let's shift the conversation just a little bit here. I can't believe that we're already 26 minutes into this. Okay, I think we get an idea where you think we are, and I'm agreeing with you pretty much 100% here. So now, where are we going? I mean, what between now and the final fire? I want to look a little bit at one of my issues with Guy McPherson that I want to interview him about, if you will ever let me, is it seems to me a little bit like he's dodging the bullet of what this is going to look like on a societal level when the clueless morons can no longer keep their heads up their asses and understand how fucked we are, and that it could not just be their grandchildren, it could possibly be them. What is it going to look like? What is your vision of, you know what I'm saying, the leading up to the ecological end of it?
I believe it will be ugly beyond comprehension. I think all of the best traits will come out in the good people, and all of the worst traits will come out in the bad people. And the bad people's traits will dominate everybody's lives. I think that I know that in the United States there's a culture of preppers, and I don't get my head around that at all. I just think that there's no way to prepare for the collapse of the biosphere. I think most of the prepping is done at a whole different level. But if you don't have any air to breathe, or if the only air you have to breathe is full of ionizing radiation from A, the meltdown of 450 nuclear power stations when industrial civilization collapses, B, the 12 or 1,300 spent fuel pool fires that will burst out of those power stations, which are infinitely worse than the meltdowns themselves. And then 3, from the habitat wars and the nuclear war that will be taking place as everyone, all the big swinging dicks on the planet, have to have their say while they still can. I think it'll be ugly beyond comprehension. That's why I really advise people to make the most of every day now. These are the good old days.
So that's your bottom line advice. I mean, so what is your advice? I mean, to the people who are just coming into this and really starting to, stumbling down this rabbit hole. I don't have advice for them. Do you have any advice? I mean, for me and everybody else flailing around down here.
Well, I have a little bit, and a lot of it is based around the different empathy things that Guy McPherson talks about all the time. But I think one of the things we have to remember when we're talking about this is that the vast majority of the people on the planet don't have access to electricity, let alone the internet. So most of the people are just going to get rubbed out because they're so poor. The people who are going to listen to this interview between us are the 5%ers on the planet. You know, they are really the privileged few. So the only advice I think I could give to them would be to get the fuck out of cities. Get away from cities as fast as you can, because the cities will be ugly beyond comprehension when the water's not flowing and the electricity's not flowing, and you live on the 30th or 40th or 50th floor. When the power goes off in cities, you know what it rains from those buildings? Shit.
Yeah.
People will shit and throw it off the balcony.
Well, they're not going to be able to, I mean, just trying to get, if the elevator ain't working and you live on the 30th floor and it's 110 degrees outside, you ain't going to make it back to your living room without dying of heat stroke. Did you read that story recently? I mentioned it. This is what I think, this, in my opinion, is anyone who wants a peek into what it's going to look like. Is there was a stabbing on this train in Portland where
I did follow that.
This crazy guy, and he stabbed these three guys, and while the guy, one of the victims, was literally taking his last gasp, bleeding to death, another passenger on the subway car rolled him. Stole his wallet, pulled his wedding band off of his bloodied finger, and grabbed his backpack, his wallet, and his wedding band. Before the guy was even dead, and I'm thinking anybody who doesn't understand what this is going to look like when the subways stop running, that's the only story they need to read. I think
that is collapse personified. That is exactly what it will be like. I suggest people read a book by Cormac McCarthy called The Road.
Yeah.
And it's an extraordinary dystopian story, but it's actually a love story about a father and son. And the father has a gun and a bullet, and he's kept the bullet for his son.
Yeah.
When the situation was going to get so bad that he couldn't protect them anymore, he was going to save him with a bullet.
Yeah.
It'll be dystopian beyond comprehension.
So all we can do is just stay out of the crossfire. The best.
Yeah, get the fuck away from big population masses. Get to somewhere where there's water, because you can live without food. My comrades in Ireland who did the 1981 hunger strike, some of them, Bobby Sands and Patsy O'Hara, they lasted 60 days without food. You can get by without food, but you can't get by without water, and you can't get by without air. And both of those things are going away. Potable water is going away, and inhalable air is going away. The whole fucking lot is going away. We've succeeded. This species in 200 years has succeeded in murdering the best and most livable habitat that we know of in the universe. It's quite an extraordinary story.
And so what is the geologic record going to look like 1 million years from now? What are we leaving behind as our legacy in the Anthropocene?
Well, one thing anymore, Dr. James E. Henson, sometimes referred to as the grandfather of climate change, at one stage he thought we would go Venus. And the surface temperature of Venus is 462 degrees Celsius. That melts lead and tin. So obviously there's no complex life that we can relate to on Venus. But when all these nuclear power stations go off and the nuclear weapons are all used and the spent fuel pool fires are all burnt out, there's a school of thought now that we might actually lose the atmosphere, and that this planet have no atmosphere, and it end up being more like Mars than Venus. So, you know, that's the level of dystopia that we've sunk to.
I got to ask you the question, since it hasn't come up yet. How many kids do you have?
I have none.
Was that at what age did you make that decision, and why did you make that decision?
I can tell you the day I decided it.
Okay.
I was in Istanbul on the 26th of April 1986. That was the day that Chernobyl blew up. And I was walking around in the
so
spring
how old
sunshine.
in 86? You were 27?
No, it was 26. Yeah, it was 26.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And they told us that there was no radiation in Istanbul, and I looked into it, and of course that was bullshit. The whole of Europe had been nuked. And I made a conscious decision then to not have children. So, you know, I understand why people want to have them, but I also understand that how much easier my life is now dealing with the unraveling of the biosphere without having to look at my own children. But I'm surrounded by children. All my friends, my nieces and nephews, they all have children. And I weep for them in the same way, but not the way that a parent would. Because only a parent can know what that horror would be like.
Well, as I say about this feud between Guy McPherson and Paul Beckwith, I said there's one difference between Guy McPherson and Paul Beckwith. Well, there's three differences. Paul Beckwith has 3 children. And that you cannot have children and have the conversation that you and I, being 2 childless men, are having. It would be just psychologically that it would kill you, pretty much, to have this discussion.
I'm surprised that my nieces and nephews and my young friends who have young children, I'm surprised they can bear to look at me, let alone speak with me, considering what I talk about.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine how that reverberates through their psyche?
So what do you think? I don't know if you heard this interview I had with this with Antonio Reed, this 23-year-old, a couple of weeks ago. I mean, this young man, he gets it, you know, and he's 23 years old. I mean, what is your message to somebody, you know, just coming out of college right now and going and looking for a job in the global industrial economy, and the house and the white picket fence and the 2.3 children? What do you have to say to them?
There has been a paradigm shift on this planet, and that reality no longer exists. One of the interesting things about what's coming, the great unraveling that I call it, is that people in countries, in developing countries that are really poor, will get through the early stages of collapse much better than the wealthy people in the wealthy states. Because if you live in Yemen or in Harare or in Mozambique, where I worked in Mozambique, and I had a team of Mozambican men that worked alongside me. And one of the things that you see in those places is how innovative and creative and adaptable those people are, because they've got no fucking choice.
Yeah.
Whereas all of the wealthy elites, and you know, most people in our culture don't understand that they're wealthy. The poor working class in the United States and New Zealand, if they've got food in a fridge and they've got electricity on, they're wealthy compared to the vast majority of people on the planet. So all I would say to those people is make the most of what you can now. And if you've got young people and careers, I would send them into trades where they can learn how to make things and fix things and improvise, or learn how to grow things. How many people, young people now, know how to grow? They all, you know, there's a whole lot of people who think that meat grows on a white polystyrene plate.
Yep. Yeah, oh yeah, it's I was taking one of these quizzes you see about identifying these farm animals. I mean, and just looking at it and thinking, are there seriously people who cannot tell the difference between a cow and a sheep? And apparently there are. There's people who will never see the Milky Way as long as they live, from the day they're born to the, and it breaks my heart. I mean, but it's funny just on this sick, tragic level. Anyway,
that's a reflection of how vulnerable people are going to be.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I could go on and on with this. I've noticed about 20 comments you've made where we could go on a tear for 2 or 3 hours. But I think for our introductory, I hope we're going to be able to do this again. I hope we'll be able to do this again 6 months to a year from now, and check in with each other. But before we wrap up, any closing comments? If you have 1 minute to get a message as you're running into the sunset, trying to get away from this, and there's someone stumbling in the street, what's your message to them here in the last minute?
Make the very, very most of every day. Time is much shorter than you think.
Okay, and with that advice, I'll stick around after I wrap this up so we can talk a little bit off camera. But with that advice, I'm going to go
sometime. And anyone who's listening to this interview now and wants to make a comment and slag me off and tell me where I'm wrong, let them do that. And then we'll debate the whole thing again in whenever time suits you.
But they will have no problem taking you up on that challenge. But I am going to, you're making me thirsty drinking that beer while I'm sitting here with iced tea. But I'm going to go squeeze some limes and make me a margarita and head out to this blood red sunset setting through the choking smoke of the... of this year's crop of wildfires in East Bumblefuck, New Mexico, and I will toast you, Kevin, and I do appreciate you being a member of the tribe, and we look forward to your continued comments, and anytime. You got my number now, brother.
Cool. It's been a pleasure. Have a great extinction.
All right, I'd say I'm going to be back with you in a minute, but I'm going to wrap this up, guys. So that was our buddy, fellow tribes member Kevin Hester, and I'm sure he would like to hear your comments. So bring them on, and we will talk to you tomorrow with tomorrow's Clueless Moron Roundup rant. Bye, guys.